Hello there retro heads, Benny Williams here from A Hermit's Hideaway, and as the PlayStation Mini Classic is a big thing at the moment, I want to get my sort of say in it and recommend 20 games which I think should be on the system. Now this is by no means the be all and end all. Everyone's got their own individual taste, stuff like that, but these are games I think would suit the system really well, especially having that second controller. It will be great use of that and making sure that you've got plenty of games to play even two player as well as some single player campaign as well. So the first game we're going to talk about is Road Rash Jailbreak. Road Rash on the original Mega Drive was an absolutely great game. You're basically on a bike and you're just racing against other opponents, and you've got to try and be the first to get to the finishing line, of course. And this one, you get to punch your opponents and things like that, which is great. In Jailbreak, it's more graphically enhanced, of course, and you get better weapons, some more zanier characters, some better tracks and good soundtrack and things like that. It's just a really great step up to the original game. Next we're going to talk about Bloody Roar 2. What I like about Bloody Roar 2 is that it's sort of like a Tekken style game without trying to be Tekken too much. It's got some combination moves and things, but it's not as intricate as Tekken 3 is or the other Tekken games, so it deserves to be on this list, especially because you can transform into animals as well. And if memory serves me correctly, in the original game, if you get knocked out of bounds you go into a different sort of area of the arena, which was always cool. So next up we've got Crash Team Racing. This is Naughty Dog's attempt to hold a candle up to the Mario Kart franchise, and it does it incredibly well. There's a story mode on it where you can go around and you get to drive around in different hub worlds and you get to do different challenges, and also in the main game you get to collect boxes like you do in the original games, pick up the sapphires in the time trials, and you've got to do so many things going back to the game to be able to complete all these little challenges and unlock all these things. It's just absolutely fantastic. It's a brilliant game. It's got a great two-player mode on it and also some great power-ups as well. So next up we're going to talk about Crash Bandicoot 1. Again, this is Naughty Dog trying to take on the Mario franchise, and again they did an extremely good job of it. Basically it's a platforming game where you run backwards or forwards, where obviously you've got the character out in front of you, and you get lots of different obstacles. Like I mentioned in talking about Crash Team Racing, you've got to collect so many boxes on each levels, you've got so many hidden gems and hidden paths, hidden routes and things like that, so there's so much replay value to it, and it's always a great game to go back to and play again and experience again after all these years. So following that we're going to go straight into Crash 3 Warped, which just really enhanced the series. I'm not going to talk about Crash 2 because it's a very underlooked game anyway, and I don't think it's really one that would suit the PlayStation 1 Classic very well as much as Crash Bandicoot Warped would, because it brings so many new elements to the Crash game, where you can go around on jet ski, motorbike, you get funkier creatures, funkier bosses and things like that, and it's just an all-round great game. And next up we're going to talk about Heart of Darkness. Wow, what a game. This game, you know, while not having too much replay value to it, just looks absolutely stunning still now for this time. The render that they use on there almost looks like a visual cartoon, which just got really high-end sort of polished graphics, especially for the PS1 games. Really shows what the PlayStation 1 can do, and you'll basically get transporting where you're a young boy and a dog and you get warped into this dimension. There's lots of platform elements and lots of almost nods to the likes of Dragon's Lair and Space Ace and things like that, but it's more interactive. You're controlling the character and doing the moves rather than tapping the button in a sequence. It's more free-flowing and it's a wonderful game. The graphics, the sounds, the visuals is all spot on in this game. So next we're going to talk about the original Grand Theft Auto, and what a game that was when it first came out. I was too young to play it at the time, but we still had it and I still played it. I think I was probably about 13, 14 when it came out perhaps, and it was everything bad in a game that was so good. Basically it's a bird's eye top-down game where you're this sort of gangster and you go around taking these missions for a phone, and you hijack cars, you get to run people over, you get to blow cars up, you get to kill the police in it and things like that. It's just an absolute riot, and it's so much fun, and there's so much replay value to it. It's just a great game. So next up we're going to talk about Future Cop L.A.P.D, and what a game it is. It's so underrated. It's one of my favourite PlayStation 1 games, and basically you're this big massive mech robot, and you've got a flamethrower, you've got rockets, you've got minigun and things like that, and you go around shooting other robots or the army against a sort of futuristic army. You're shooting people in it, you're blowing up barrels and things like that. It's just absolutely awesome. It's such a great game. There's a campaign mode to it, and the levels are really big, impressively big for its time for the PS1, and there's also a 2-player mode as well, coming in handy for the extra joypad. So we've already talked about Bloody Roar 2, briefly mentioned Tekken, so we're going to talk about Tekken 3. In my opinion, the best versus fighter that there is. Not only is it really easy to get into because you can just button mash and pull off some amazing combinations without even trying, but the key area with this is the technicalities with it, where you learn the players' moves, especially ones that people often choose not to use, and there's nothing more satisfying than using the character that you think is not very good, learn their moves and absolutely kicking ass with them. And it's even better when you can use it's even better when you get to learn all their power moves as well, where it's a kick or a punch and you just decimate half the life bar. It's such a great game, so much replay value, all important 2-player game for that second controller. Next up we're going to talk about Driver, which was sort of like a GTA clone without getting out your vehicle. Instead you stay in your vehicle the whole time, and it goes into a third-person perspective where the car's out in front of you, so you get to drive it around. So it sort of did the GTA car thing where it's out in front of you driving along before GTA did it, because originally with GTA it was just a top-down bird's eye. So in this one it's notorious for its tutorial level where you're in the basement of a car park, and a lot of people struggle to get through that because you've got a list of manoeuvres that you've got to pull off before you can progress in the game. So that bit is quite difficult, but once you read the manual and learn what the controls are in it, it's not really that difficult. And then when you get out there, it's like the open worldness of it for a PlayStation 1 game is fantastic. You're basically a wheelman driving around for people doing crime and things like that, and you've got to avoid the police and avoid being caught, and you get a vigilante meter and stuff like that. The game's an absolute blast. Still plays really well today. Graphically doesn't hold up too well today, but I'm sure on the PlayStation 1 Mini, should they choose to put it on there, it will be graphically enhanced and look great as well. So next we're going to talk about the original Tony Hawk's one. Who didn't want to be a skater when they were a teenager, and who didn't want to be able to pull off awesome tricks when you couldn't? At least I couldn't really pull off these tricks anyway. They were really difficult to do. I was always a better inliner than I was a skater, but you can do unlimited combos and you're only limited by your own skill and your own progression. You get to unlock different characters, secret characters. There's so many unlocks within the game and so many collectibles. You get scattered tapes, scattered letters in the word, spelling out the word skate. You get to unlock secret areas. It's got a great soundtrack. It's just an awesome game and it deserves to be on this list. Next up we're going to talk about Micro Machines V3, classic tabletop racing game, whereas the older games you get to race against 6 players, and you can either have another person playing with you for that second controller, or you can play against a CPU. It's just a crazy blast with crazy characters, and you get to go around things like a bathtub and a speedboat. You get to go around a go-kart on a pool table and things like that. It's just absolute great fun, and because you're a miniature car, everything else is huge, so there's so many obstacles in the way. You get sandy areas, you get desert areas and things like that, so it's a great fun racer. The PS1 Classic needs some racing games anyway, so that's why it's on the list. So next we're going to talk about Command and Conquer, one of the first games to get me into the strategy type of games, and it does it so well. You're basically a futuristic army playing against another futuristic army, and you start off with a few men and you've got to build up your base so you can build your barracks and get some more men, and then build up plants so you can a vehicle workshop so you can get more vehicles and take on your opposition and things like that, and you uncover the map slowly as you work your way through, clicking along, and it's a bit like click and point in a way. So it has the click and point elements with the strategy, as most strategy games does, but it's such a fun game. It sort of loses its way in the later series when it gets to the Xbox 360 days, but the original ones are absolute classics. They deserve to be revisited and played, and if you haven't played them before, you're missing out. So next we're going to talk about Alien Trilogy, first person perspective Doom type of game where you've got big massive weapons, aliens. It's really dark, it's scary, and you know, I quite often nearly touch cloth playing this game because it does get quite terrifying. So you're basically working your way around the ships and the rooms and things, and I think it's corrugated iron nearly, and you got xenomorphs jumping out at you from everywhere, face huggers, and it's just really creepy. It's really intense. There's a lot of backtracking to be done because you've got to go into certain rooms and get your key cards so that you can open other doors, other passageways. You get to blow up oil barrels. There's great explosions in it. It's just an awesome first person shooter game, and it needs to be checked out. So next up we're going to talk about Broken Sword, and this is the game that got me into the point and click genre. Absolutely brilliant game, as every game on this list is, because I keep saying how brilliant it is, but that's why they've made this list. And you're basically an American tourist holidaying in France, and you sort of wake up next to a cafe because there's been an explosion, you've been unconscious, and you want to find out why there's been an explosion, why you were nearly killed, so you turn sort of detective, and you've got to click around the area looking for clues, picking up pieces, objects and things like that to try and find out your clues, going and investigate, talking to people, and the dialogue in it is absolutely brilliant. The humour in it is absolutely brilliant. You go into the sewers and things like that, you go into all different types of places. It looked absolutely incredible for its time, and it still looks pretty damn good nowadays as well.
Drink. I feel sick, dizzy, and bruised. I don't even remember the party.
Just relax and take it easy. You've been knocked out.
You don't say. What happened?
There's been an explosion. You should try not to move.
Are you a doctor?
No, but I used to play hospitals when I was a kid. Can you remember anything at all?
No. I needed...
Is that straight or with ice?
Just give me the bottle with a teat on it.
I guess a little drop won't hurt.
That's better.
So next up we're going to talk about Pandemonium, a classic platformer, which is sort of like a 2.5D environment. It reminds me quite a bit of the game Nights into Dreams about flying. You're basically a lady or a jester. You've got your typical platform where you've got bits of floating rock or grass and things like that in the air, which you've got to jump on to get to orbs, and then you can get another orb, which is a power up to give you the ability to shoot and fire against your enemies. The levels are pretty decent sizes. It reminds me of sort of also Hercules on the PS1, which is a great action side-scrolling platformer as well. It's a really good solid game, and I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it deserves to be on the list. What a great game that was when it first came out. You're obviously a fire-breathing dragon, you get to glide, you get to fly. This was, you know, you didn't see many games where you had the ability to do that, especially taking control of a creature and being able to do what these creatures would have done in either mythical or real life. It's just absolutely groundbreaking for its time. It's got great platform elements to it, where you've got to rescue other dinosaurs that have turned into statues, so you've got to free them. So many gems to collect in this world, so many hidden areas and passages. It's just got everything that makes a It's got everything that makes a great platformer, and it's just a great game, probably the best in the series. Next game I'm going to talk about is WIPEOUT. I think it was one of the launch titles, and you're basically a futuristic hover vehicle, or a hover ship rather, and you just go down these crazy fast speedy tracks where they're almost like tubes, and sometimes the tracks will just have a sudden big massive drop, or they just suddenly have a go up really fast. Some of the tracks are separated where it gives you the impression that it's broken, but it's supposed to be like that, so you get the big massive jumps. There's lots of speed strips to be able to ride faster. There's power-ups to shoot against your opponents, so you get to fire at them with rockets or get to use a shield to protect yourself. It also has a two-player mode where you can play with that all-important second controller as well, and it's got a great soundtrack to it. Next up, we're going to talk about the original Metal Gear Solid. While not the first game in the series, it is the one that introduced a lot of us to the series, and what an amazing game that was at the time. It was absolutely groundbreaking. Graphics were absolutely stunning, the cutscenes were stunning, and you're basically not a soldier, but you're like a mercenary, and you go on espionage sort of spy missions where you can sneak around, you take out the enemies, you can kill them or put them to sleep, move the bodies around so you don't leave any clues behind. The AI is intelligent in it. If you make a noise, it will follow, it will come and investigate where it heard the sound from. It's got some great big massive explosions, great choice of weapons. You get to blow so many things up, you get to shoot so many things down. It's very intuitive. It used the PlayStation 1 in ways that we could never dream of, and it's just an all-round awesome game. Sadly, there's a few people that just couldn't get into the game, and unfortunately you sort of people are missing out because there's so much depth to the game. You just got to keep at it and keep going with it, and you are truly rewarded with the experience of it. The next game we're going to talk about is Rampage World Tour. This is one of those games that you can play in single player mode, but it's always better as two player. It's just so much more fun, and you're basically Godzilla sized creatures where you can be a lizard, you could be an ape, or you could be a giant rat, and you're basically in a city. You've got to demolish the buildings by punching them, jumping on them, kicking them. There's people inside them screaming and panicking. You can grab the people out the window and eat them. You've got the army fighting against you, so you can hit the army trucks, the army vehicles. You can punch the army men, kick them, you can eat them. You can take damage when they're firing rockets or bullets at you, because you've got a decent health meter. You can also punch trains and things like that. It's just an absolute riot. It's such a blast, but like I say, it's so much better in two player. It's just a far better experience, because otherwise it could be quite lonely because it's such a huge game with over 100 different levels on it. So that was my list of 20 PS1 games I think would be great on the PS1 Classic. In the comments, let me know what sort of games you'd like to see on there, or if there's some of the games on my list that you'd like to keep on there, which ones that you don't like would you swap out and what would you put in its place. Let's have the conversation about it and let's talk in the comments. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you soon.